Well, I guess you should always watch out for the little guy. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. I'm a little bit late on this. It's weird to say I'm not that late. It came out just last week, but I didn't jump on it immediately. And obviously, anyone who got access to a press screening saw it well before I did. And even most YouTubers who cover this sort of thing have gotten to it before me. But I'm trying to have a life and, not be working all the time every day. So some things get put off. And this did. I've now seen it. And I know the general response has been, let's go with middling. Last I checked, and I don't normally check, but it was hard to miss that this was going on. It was tied with the Eternals for the worst Rotten Tomatoes score from the critics. And while the user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes aren't terrible, on other places like IMDb or Metacritic, they're a bit more middling again. I don't put a lot of stock in any of this, but it does kind of show a general response of, which is borne out by the few people I know who have seen it, who've told me any of their thoughts about it whatsoever. As for me, I liked it pretty well. I mean, it's not incredible. I'm not really going to feel the need to watch it again anytime soon, if ever. But it might be my favorite Ant-Man movie. It's worth pointing out that that might be by default. I don't like this franchise all that much. I like the character of Ant-Man. I like Paul Rudd's part. I think he can be used well, but I've found him to be best utilized in the Avengers movies, in the team-up situations. His first film was nice. It felt like it had a lot more potential to be something a lot more unique than it was, which probably is the remnants of back when Edgar Wright was going to direct it, and those remnants still being held on to, even as it was handled by other directors and went through rewrites and all that stuff. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I actually really didn't care for. It was that one I came out of going, and I've liked it less the more I've thought about it since. So this, maybe it's benefiting from lowered expectations. I don't expect much out of an Ant-Man movie, and the style of humor it has gone for historically has not done a ton for me. I didn't hate it. It's not it's not a style of humor that I can't stand. It's not like trying to watch a Judd Apatow movie. Ugh. But it hasn't really hooked me. So I'm sure there are some people who are fans of the franchise who are a little bit disappointed that this is more serious, more dour, tonally a bit more in line with, well, something like Endgame or the Avengers movies, and less with the other Ant-Man movies. For me, that's not a detriment. It might even be a benefit. Because I just went through this going, yeah. Now, that said, I could see within this the bones of what could have been a more appropriately scaled conflict. Because while I think they handled it about as well as they could handle it, just the general premise and the idea of Ant-Man taking on Kang is kind of absurd. That's not to say you can't do it. I mean, heck, in the comics, they had Squirrel Girl manage to stop Galactus from eating the planet, and it was awesome. But, it does kind of make you go, is this the hero we should be introducing this threat with? And there's an argument to be made there. But as I said, I can sort of see within this what could have been the core of a much smaller movie. Because there's these things going on with Cassie, Scott's daughter, as she, is obviously getting to a point where she has a lot of passion for wanting to make the world a better place. And then you have Scott, who's kind of sitting on his laurels. Now, not in a I don't care about the world anymore way, but you also kind of get it. He was involved in helping to defeat Thanos. He dealt with a literal universe exterminating threat. The day-to-day stuff that's going on feels like that stuff sorts itself out, doesn't it? Like, I'll suit up again when it's big because I can help with that. So, you get it. It makes sense. But Cassie has that young, fervent desire to help, and you can sense that disappointment that she has in him, that he isn't doing more day to day, that she feels like he's just kind of kicked back. He's checked out a little bit, at least as far as superheroing. And if you had taken that and drilled down into it more, and while it does sort of come up later, this idea of Scott looking out for his family, but not looking out for others. And Cassie pushing back on him for that. You can't only care about the things that directly impact you. That does come up later in the movie, but again, it's just kind of in there. And it could have been the core focus. You could have dealt with a much more scaled down threat, something that isn't worth calling in the Avengers on, but that Ant-Man recognizes as being dangerous enough that he doesn't want to endanger himself or his family to deal with it, and Cassie wanting him and expecting him and being disappointed with him when he doesn't, and then either going out and trying to deal with it herself or otherwise doing something that forces his hand. And I think that would have been a more appropriately scaled thing. That having been said, I did still enjoy this. I did still enjoy going quantum and giving us this world that I have slightly mixed feelings about the Quantumverse. On the one hand, a lot of the landscapes and a fair amount of the wildlife are gorgeous and wonderful and inventive. And then there's other bits where, it's more civilized and built up, and it's like, oh, it's Star Wars. That's kind of what it felt like. Like, it's decent Star Wars. Like, there's a good mix of weird aliens doing weird things, and like, I had a good feel to it. I did like it, but it's like, oh, okay. But it was interestingly designed for a lot of it. Kang, Kang. So I was really looking forward to him because I loved him at the end of Loki, and because on paper I shouldn't have. He just shows up out of nowhere. He wasn't built up, and he just stands around and talks for like half an hour in the season 1 finale of Loki, and I was enraptured because of the performance. And I was a little bit nervous to see him in this because the whole idea is this is a variant of the one we already saw. So knowing that, I was like, is he going to lose the aspects that I really liked about that other character? Because theoretically, he's going to be a little bit different. He's going to be a variant. He's going to have a different emphasis. And he is a little different, but I can still see the aspects from the guy at the end of Loki. And also those little things where this side of him, the Conqueror, bled through in a few moments in Loki. Now those things that you only got glimpses of there, that's full on what's going on here. It's good. I like him in this part. He makes this character really interesting to watch. Is he especially deep or complex? No. But boy, is he magnetic. I love watching him. I love hearing him talk. I'm here for Kang. I am here for Kang to be the big threat going forward. 100% here for it. Love it. As far as a lot of the rest of it goes, the cast have settled into their roles very well. I could even see an argument being made for Michael Douglas being kind of half asleep through this movie, and maybe, but I feel like it also kind of fits the way that they've done Hank, where he's like, this is still going on. Boy, I'm getting too old for this. Yeah, but he could still bring a little bit of energy to certain moments and enough to make it seem like he wasn't just there for the paycheck. I do feel a little bit bad for Michelle Pfeiffer because she gets saddled with initially being very mysterious and refusing to give information and then getting saddled with the exposition after that. So I feel a little bit bad for her, especially given her own background with what had gone on here before she escaped the quantum realm. I kind of would have liked to have seen her get a bit more of a proper highlight. She still does well with what she's given. Cassie's good. The actress has really good chemistry with Paul Rudd. So the performance chemistry between the two of them is great. They make a great dynamic. Evangeline Lilly she's fine. She can do Hope very well. Hope also doesn't get a ton to do. Let me back that up. She gets a bit to do, but it almost never feels like it's her thing. She's just kind of also there doing stuff. And again, doing it well. But she's not. This is Ant-Man's story. This is Scott's story and Kang's story more than anybody else's. Even though there are situations where I feel like it should involve some of the others more than it does, particularly Janet. But it is what it is, and it's probably a bit overlong. But I wasn't bored, and I wasn't checking the time, which I'm not above doing, and that's generally a good sign for me. We have William Jackson Harper playing a relatively small role as a telepath, and he's great. He doesn't give that many scenes, but he's great, and I love him. And there's a couple of weird aliens that I really like and enjoy, either for their designs or for the characterization of them. Bill Murray effectively just has one scene. He's actually quite good in it. There's a really wonderful moment that I don't think it's super spoilery to say, but like some guards show up like they're gonna try and arrest everybody. He just points at them and goes, "No!" And it's actually shockingly commanding given how casual and laid back he'd been up to that point. And that was a moment where like, ooh, I kind of wish we got that from you a bit more often. And I know there's like stuff that's come out about Bill Murray and how he's behaved on past sets and towards certain co-stars. And I feel a little not great praising him, but he is good in this part. I mean, if I'm going to go down that path, we could talk about Michael Douglas for frickin' ages. So let's move along. Some of the other stuff in here. Okay, let's talk about Modoc briefly. I know Modoc got mocked a lot, especially like that the effect was bad for the giant head. I liked Modoc. I was here for Modoc. I thought the way that they chose to what he is and how he works and the nature of him as a character, I actually thought was a really neat take on him. And does it look like crap? Well, yeah, a bit. But given the nature of who Modoc is and how he functions within the story, I think that actually is okay. I'm not going to say it makes it better. I don't think if the effect was more convincing, I'd be going, boy, this would be better if it looked worse. I don't think I'd be saying that. But given the nature of him and where he fits in all this, I actually don't think that the effect not being great is that much of a problem, if that makes any kind of sense. I can't really get into details of that without getting into spoilers, and I'll probably only have a very brief spoiler section at the back end of this. Beyond that, the action scenes, this has happened before with Marvel. It jumped out to me a lot more in this than it has in the past, which is this film especially has these big sweeping panning shots, these wonderful vistas of this incredible place and location that they've created. And then we start an action scene and it's close in, handheld, jittery, and rapid cut, which first of all, I'm just tired of as an action style. Like, especially after I've seen movies like RRR from last year, which showed the power of, slowing down so we can see what the hell's going on, keeping it in wide shot, keeping it in long sustained shots, and how freaking cool that is. I'm really over the rapid cut thing. And also, I'll grant it's not as bad as it used to be. The worst of rapid cut fight editing was from like a decade or even 15 years ago, but we still haven't fully shaken it off. And it's really jarring in a movie like this where that's not the shooting style of the rest of the movie. So it stood out to me even more, on top of the fact that I'm kind of tired of that as an action editing approach. It's unfortunate. So I suppose I'll talk briefly about spoilers. So if you haven't seen it already and you care about spoilers, this is probably the time to check out. But if you either have seen it or you don't care, here we go. So a couple of post-credit scenes. The first one, we see some of the other major key variants of Kang. Those did make me a little bit nervous again because they are the kind of exaggerated leaning into like a one specific note thing that I was worried about. That having been said, I am taking that as this is, just setting up for other stuff. And I don't think that they would be, any of these iterations that we see would be as one note if they were the main focus. So we'll see where that goes. And then we have the final end credit scenes, which basically just serves as a reminder that Loki season 2 is a thing that's going to happen this year. And to swing back to Modoc, the fact that it's Darren, and that Darren's just a mess. I mean, look at him. I'd be a mess too. I like this version of Modoc. Let's be honest. Modoc has not been a character that anybody can take seriously for a very long time. There's a reason that when he got a series on Hulu, it was a comedy series. There's a reason that by and large, when he shows up in the comics, it's during a cold open action sequence where the heroes wrap up defeating him before getting on with whatever the actual plot arc of that comic is going to be. That's what he tends to get used for, because you can't take the guy seriously. This doesn't. And I think it works. If you're going to do him, I think this is absolutely fine. And the implications are interesting in regards to Kang in terms of who's actually the worst version of this guy. Because we've now gone through 2 iterations of him who are awful. We've gone through He Who Remains in Loki, and now the Conqueror in this one. And both of them claim, I'm your better option versus all the rest of me. You would be better off with me than what's going to be unleashed if I'm gone. And we've now had that twofold. I'm kind of impressed that they pulled that off twice, because it's effectively the same core thing. Now, granted, what He Who Remains and what the Conqueror are aiming to do is different, so it still feels different enough, but they're both kind of playing that same trick of, yeah, you might hate me, but it could be a lot worse when it comes to how I could be, or which version of me you deal with. But also doesn't change the fact that he's awful. And I like that there's those moments at the end with Scott kind of, at least briefly, grappling with that. What if he's right? What if by taking out the Conqueror, it's opening the door for something much, much worse? And not just something, other versions of Kang that are much, much worse. I'll be interested to see where it goes from here. Again, overall, I did enjoy it. I thought this was fun, entertaining, visually interesting. The characters worked well, and the villain is spot on. Is it amazing? Is it top tier? No. I don't think it was ever going to be, but I don't regret my time with it, and so it gets a thumbs up on that basis. So, yeah. If I were to do an overall ranking, it probably would fall in the middle, but for me at least, calling it mid seems a bit much. I think it's a little bit better than mid. Even though I admit it would probably land in the middle if I were to do a ranking. But I'm also the kind of person who, unless most of the output of a franchise is bad, then the middle is actually probably perfectly decent stuff, and it's only the bottom that's the really bad stuff, and stuff that makes me go, ugh. But I don't know. I haven't done a full ranking on Marvel in a while. I don't know when I'm going to do that again. Because, well, I suppose it would make sense after whenever they get to the next team up. I don't know. I'll figure that out another time. But I think this is officially launching us into Phase 5. And I'm here for Kang. I'm here for Kang. The rest of it, we will see. What did you think of this one? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and is how I'm able to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe, help me as well. Links in the description for other things that I do. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now my thanks to my highest supporters on Patreon. Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Becky Sparks, Fernabulax, the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. And if you want to get your name in the credits, check out the rewards on the Patreon.